Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I'm going to make this video quick because my phone is acting up and for whatever reason it's not allowing long videos. I am at the studio today. I drove up here for By Any Means Necessary. It's another show that's on Sputnik. Look, I wanted to talk quickly about the censorship thing, and I wanted to make it quick, to the point. Based on the Alex Jones issue being fired, I think I did a video on Ben Dixon being wrong, and the cat from Rational National. To put it in very specific and short terms, I understand that we're talking about private entities, and to some degree you can even make an argument that that's the problem. The majority of discourse, overwhelming majority, now takes place on private entities. 70% of the news is accrued through either Facebook, Twitter, Google, etc., etc. It's going to go up. Older people are now also getting their news from sources in this way, meaning across the spectrum, you have a choke point that is the internet itself. You have a political apparatus that is in the middle of a populist upswing, and they are trying any and everything they can to put that down because they don't necessarily want to deal with it, even though it is their policies of austerity, neoliberalism, the capitalistic structure itself, and the greedy that wants to advantage themselves at the expense of everyone else. That has been a driver of much of the chaos in the system itself. You can make an argument that a guy coming in screaming hope and change and not giving hope and change, well, you can imagine you have a lot of disillusioned people out throughout the population itself. And yeah, it was leveraged by the Republican Party and Trump to get elected. The thing is, in the political discourse that's taking place around this entire issue of censorship, which you have to take into account, you have a political class that is pushing back against this backlash, and they've been trying to incite the private course or private class to do something about it. Meaning, it is not something where businesses have just come up and say, you know what, we need to do something about this. It is a political space that is being pressured from populists to change. Their response to this is not change, but to use private organizations. Those private organizations now that contain the overwhelming majority of political thought to try to silence it through that means, not through the means of political discourse. There's a difference in those things. There's a difference in those things. I understand that Alex Jones is a goofball and a bomb thrower. And what I make my argument here is not purely a defense of Alex Jones. In fact, I just look at it as Alex Jones at that point. That is the war, where the war needs to be fought. I don't want it to get closer and closer and closer to us. And yeah, it's not just Alex Jones.
Your destination is on the right.
Left-wing sites have been either taken down, left-wing sites have been silenced, and of course, Al Jazeera, in many respects, Truth Dig, Black Agenda Report, left-leaning sites are also being censored on the internet where their traffic has fallen off of a cliff. The modus operandi here is to try to push people into more conservative or more, you can say, mainstream means of thought. I don't necessarily think that's positive. For all the people who are saying, hey, this is awesome, it's perfectly okay to do this, what happens when, or if they say, look, our monitors say that the Russia stuff is nonsense, so our terms of use is now going to be constrained or looked at in a way that gets rid of people who believe this, meaning silencing those videos, or at the very least demonetizing those videos, or at the very least striking those accounts altogether. Be careful what you applaud and what you wish for. In the same way you make an argument this is a culture war issue, they will make an argument that this is also a culture war issue, that we're under assault, and that these private enterprises are no longer platforms, but they need to also take an active role in silencing dissent. That is what they were saying at the Senate testimony. Again, you can't take Alex Jones being kicked off as a specific case. The issue here is the wider narrative, and how now Jones and how it slides in. I make my argument here that in the same way that corporations don't have complete control over each and everything that they do in their borders, meaning if I make a pie shop, I can't make the pie out of cyanide. Or if you come into a pie shop and you're black, if I don't like your guts, I still have to serve you, because part and parcel of me opening the shop, Meaning part of the agreement that I make with the government, with the populace itself, is that if I open that shop, I have to serve everybody. I can't make specific choices. I'm making the case that the same is true for search and for our new paradigm of information. We have a new paradigm, and we need to start accommodating and being aware that we're in a new paradigm from the standpoint of the way information is accrued, information is read, and information is being debated. If the government is putting pressure on private entities to silence populist dissent, then the government is doing it in the realm of First Amendment rights of free speech. It needs to be changed, and it needs to be pushed back against. Whether that's a strengthening of First Amendment laws to include entities that are speech entities, meaning Google doesn't exist, Facebook doesn't exist, Twitter doesn't exist without somebody something out from the standpoint of them saying something, for them showing something, for them getting across a dispositional perspective. Those sites fail to exist without it. As such, do you really want those sites to have algorithms that can essentially skew information in a particular way, or that they can pick some but not others? I'm saying, do you want these organizations that are the masters of information, and the masters in this case of reality, to be shaping that reality based on their political whims? Is that what you want? Or do you want protections for people like you, people like me, people like Dixon, people like Rational National, people like Dora, who may not necessarily always tote the mainstream narrative of events? We should have protections. Whether those protections include Alex Jones or not, meaning a democratically chosen protections that try to say, hey, if people are saying something online, they're protected in the way that they say things, providing they're not going beyond certain bounds, and those bounds not purely being determined by the terms of use of these multinational corporations. That's what I'm saying. Israel has been pressuring platforms in order to get rid of content of Palestinian rights or BDS. This can get worse. This will get worse. Alex Jones is just the flashpoint. He's just the one that everybody saw in these big flashy terms. But this can and will hit all of us. If this is a new paradigm of free speech, we need to acknowledge it as such, or a new paradigm of how we communicate. We need to acknowledge it as such. And we need to realize that me doing this channel, I am vulnerable. There's no union. There's nothing backing any of us up. In this case, we're all left to our own devices. We're all atomized. The channel can make any decision it wants over each individual channels, getting rid of channels it doesn't particularly like. I'm asking you, is this really what you want? From the standpoint of the way we go about our affairs, where at any point a corporation can snuff somebody out. Whether they've done something or not is almost irrelevant, because it's going to be read in a subjective way. You don't even know. I don't understand why people wouldn't argue for protections for people to give their political speech, providing that speech is not gone beyond certain obnoxious bounds. Those obnoxious bounds determined in somewhat of in collective way, not purely by the corporation itself. That's my point. We need a strengthening of the First Amendment. Pie Shop has to serve blacks, has to serve Hispanics. No, you can't tell my race by being online, but what I say is, to some degree, a distinguishing characteristic. And providing you're not screaming fire, you're not trying to get somebody shot, maybe that speech should be protected, even in private enterprise. Out here, I've tried to get this across a few ways, and I don't think this is the strongest way I've made the argument, but I'm trying to condense it. Alright guys, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks everyone.